Today, I thought I would talk about the limits and the benefits of, of meditation. I've been meditating since 2004, so over 20 years. And the reason I got into meditation is I had a realization one day that I woke up from a dream and I was like, if I don't do something, my life is going to go in a bad way. I was in graduate school at the time, and the reality is that in some ways, my trauma patterns were showing up in the way that I lived my life. And I knew that on some level, and it showed up in my dreams. So I remember talking with a friend about it and saying to him, like, there's something I need to do here, but I'm not sure what to do. And I was leery about doing therapy at the time because I'd had some not so good experiences as a teenager with therapy. And so we talked about it, and he suggested to me that we try something a little different. He suggested meditation. And in particular, he suggested a book by a man named B.K. Francis, which was all about um, dissolving the ego. It was relaxing into being, breathing chi and dissolving the ego. So I picked the book up and I read it and I started doing the meditation practice. And I discovered a very powerful experience around meditation. I discovered that I could use meditation to help me work through some of the trauma patterns that I had in my life. Welcome, Tara. Glad to have you here. And for me, this was a powerful moment. It was like, oh, I can actually I can do this breathing technique and this thing, and I can work through some of these things that I'm realizing that are coming up in my life. And this will be really good. And I could also at the same time work through some of the physical tension in my body and the energetic blocks. And so that's how I got into meditation and specifically into Taoist water breathing meditation, which is a practice that I still do to this day. I love meditation. And I think there are some amazing benefits to meditation. And I also think there are some things about meditation that are worth exploring and being very real about that I don't think people always acknowledge. And so today, first of all, I do welcome any comments or questions that you have. So, like Tara, now that you're here, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop those in. And I will definitely respond to them and read them aloud. But today, what I want to do is I want to explore in some depth the benefits and also the limitations of meditation, because I think a trap that I fell into at one point early on in my meditation journey was I was kind of like, well, meditation is the is what I need to do in order to move forward in regards to resolving my trauma. Like, I don't need to do anything else. I don't need to do therapy. I don't need to do a support group or anything like that. And I held and this was a mistake that I made in my practice, because what I did is I essentially put all of my energetic and emotional bags and eggs into one basket when that wasn't necessarily the healthiest choice. Now, let me be clear, meditation does have some amazing benefits in terms of just like regulating stress and anxiety, helping you to be more present and aware. And it can be a really good way to get in touch with your body. And I think one of the most important and most responsible things that any of us can do is recognize that there are multiple routes toward doing the inner work that we need to do in our lives. And that when we don't do that inner work in a responsible way, it can come out sideways in our lives. Welcome, Adrian. It's good to see you and have you here. Again, if you have any comments or questions, feel free to drop those into the chat. I welcome them always. I'm always glad when people want to share their own thoughts and processes. And I say this as someone who also I will fully admit I have a few different meditation courses that I offer to people. But as I say in those meditation courses, like, hey, here's what you can do with meditation. And remember that you can also remember to also make sure that you're doing these other things. Now, I will later on in during this live, I will drop in a meditation course. It's one that I've recently updated. We've got a new workbook for it, and that's amazing. But again, I want you to remember that meditation is something that ideally complements what you are already doing. Now, back in 2004, when I found out about meditation, it was a great practice for me to get into. And at the time, as I said, I had some issues around therapy. I'd had some negative experiences. Like when I was 18, my mom had sent me to a therapist who was also a Christian, and he shared notes with her that he shouldn't have because at that point I was an adult. And so it was like for me, I was kind of like, I don't know if I really trust therapists. Eventually, I did find therapists that I could work with, um, and that was a good thing. But at the time, I didn't really trust therapists, and I had good reason not to. So for me, meditation was a good practice to do. I was in my mid to late 20s. I was realizing that hey, my life is okay, but there's some things about it that aren't so good, and the way that I respond to them is not good, and I need to work through this stuff. Now, there are many different reasons that people meditate. The stereotype that I usually see out there is that, oh, to still the mind. You're like when you meditate, the idea is that you should have an empty or blank mind. I want to share with you that while that can be a potential outcome of meditation, that should never be the main reason that you do it. I definitely think that meditation can help you cultivate awareness and presence in your life and allow you to cultivate your subtle senses. And there are a lot of different purposes for meditation. I shared one, which was being able to be a lot less stressed and being able to dissolve energetic and emotional blockages and trauma. That's one reason you can meditate. Another reason can be to cultivate stillness of mind or be more mindful in your life. Another reason can be in order to get in touch with your body. Another reason can be to cultivate your psychic abilities and powers. There's no wrong reason to meditate. And when people get hung up on the idea that their meditation should only be done for one reason or another, I think they limit themselves quite a bit. Over the years, I've explored and experimented with a number of different types of meditation. I've done everything from like path working, where it's like, okay, you're creating a guided visualization, t- to Taoist breathing meditations, both the fire and water style. And if you don't know what the fire and water style are, basically it's just a different style of breathing and energetic experience of the chi or the energy of the body. So fire is much more forceful. Water is much more about dissolving the current. I prefer water. I actually think it is better overall for in terms of the style of meditation. But fire meditation practices have some benefits as well, and I've used them sometimes for some different things, including helping me to deal with emergency situations where I've needed to rev my energy up, and have used the meditation practice to kind of snap my mind into a place where I'm clear and clean and focused in the moment and able to deal with an emergency. I've also explored Dzogchen, which is Tibetan Buddhist meditation, and other versions of Buddhist meditation. With Dzogchen, I've focused on Zen, which is awareness practice. And then, of course, I've developed my own meditation practices. I have one called the Elemental Balancing Ritual, which is really about balancing yourself with like the elements in your life, and that's a really powerful practice. And I'll be sharing some more about that in the near future. So, really, with meditation, there are a number of different purposes that we can use it, and there are some great benefits, because of that. So then, I shared earlier we were going to talk about the downsides. So, what are the downsides? Well, as I shared earlier, one of them is only using meditation to navigate the issues in your life. While I think that meditation can help a lot, I can also tell you that meditation can take you into some pretty dark places. When I was doing Taoist water dissolving meditation, there were a few years where I was doing some very intense work around emptiness, around stillness, around some other things. And I invariably came to some places where there was some deep trauma. Fortunately, what I did is I had come to learn within a few years of that, the idea of like meditation being the only thing you ever need to do was not accurate at all. And I started working with a couple of different therapists. And that changed a lot of things for me because when I could go into a therapy session and say, yeah, I was meditating on emptiness and I had this really powerful experience, and here's how it's showing up, we were able to kind of take that apart and explore it in a different way, which helped me to understand and then apply that understanding to the meditation, but also to my life. And as somebody who does a fair amount of work with men's support groups and actually helps to coach and facilitate them, I always advocate support groups. Knowing that you're not alone is important. So you could have a meditation group even where afterwards, like you talk about what your experiences are and you support each other in it. I think it's really important to recognize that you can have multiple avenues toward taking care of yourself and toward exploring other things, like your psychic abilities and all that other stuff. And so having those different support groups can be important. And I want to be clear when I talk about meditation, that meditation in and of itself is not a bad thing, but it's just like, look, if we're going to go and do some deep inner work, expect that you're going to go on an underworld journey. Like that's just the reality of it. And whether you call that shadow work or underworld journeying or whatever it is you want to call it, or simply just a dissolving practice, it's a reality. Now I'm going to pop into the message here, the meditation mastery class. This is a class, like I said, that I've recently redone. If you're interested, check it out. I will also have it in the show notes as well. And one of the most important things that I'm going to share with you in regards to meditation as well is that meditation as a practice is best done consistently. I've never found that inconsistent meditation has worked all that well. It's kind of like doing magic inconsistently. Okay, like I'm going to do a magical working once in a great while. It's just not going to have the same effect as doing magic every day or at least on a somewhat regular basis. The same thing is true of meditation. I meditate every day at lunch. The reason I meditate every day at lunch is because it helps me out significantly in terms of just being able to show up and be present in my everyday reality and life. So I find it really helpful and important to have that kind of consistency. The other aspect to it is that with meditation, I think it's really important that along with the consistency, you really spend some time exploring some of the different techniques. You might have one technique and you're kind of like, this is my tried and true. I think getting some variety in can be really helpful. And it's not because learning one technique and sticking with it is a bad thing. I mean, I think that's great for discipline purposes. But sometimes it's really helpful to be like, oh, I'm going to explore this technique over here, or I'm going to try this other thing out because it gives us a different sense as to what we can do. And it helps us understand the limits of a given technique. So that's another reason we want to explore those different aspects of meditation. Now, before I continue on, if either of you have any questions, feel free to drop those in the chat. I'm more than happy to answer them. Or if you have any comments about what I'm sharing, feel free to leave that too. And I am going to continue on, but I mean, if you're writing something out, keep writing and I will definitely respond to it. So, one of the other downsides that I want to share around meditation that, again, I think is really important is that sometimes people will get so into meditation that they will neglect mm, like focusing on the actions they can take. Like, okay, it kind of can become a form of spiritual bypassing. Like, I can just meditate my problems away. Meditation may help you to calm your mind. It may help you to regulate yourself, which is always a good thing. And it should never be a substitute for dealing with real life. You know, we all have situations that we're going to come up with in our lives. And I think it's really important to be able to say, like, okay, I have this challenging situation coming up. And Meditation has expanded my capacity to handle the situation, and I still need to take action. I think what that does is it actually builds trust in ourselves and it shows us that we can use meditation as a tool in our tool belt, but that it's not the only tool that we have. The other thing that I think is really important to remember is that meditation as a process is something that can be done alone, but it can be done in a group with other people. And it's a funny thing. It's like, well, if I'm meditating I'm not talking with those people or anything. You're not talking with those people, but you are communicating and connecting with those people. There is an energetic resonance or presence or beingness that occurs. Some of the best practices that I do are you know around like experiencing meditation every day with other people. Like I have a practice that I do where I would consider it to be a kind of meditation where I meet with a group of people and we kind of do this back and forth kind of like trance experience where we're actually sharing what we're experiencing, but it becomes a kind of meditation that expands the mind and the presence and the being. And sometimes you can meditate in silence with other people, and that can be just as powerful as well. So those are some of my thoughts on meditation. Um, if you watch this video, I'd welcome any comments that you have, and if you're curious about the class, feel free to sign up and check it out. It is a class where I walk you through 6 different meditation practices and give you step by step instructions to help you get comfortable and clear with how to apply those meditation practices to your life and your magical practice. Thank you so much for being on here if you were live. And if you're watching this later on as a recording, thank you for watching it. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care.